advocate. And apart from that, I think making sure you are somewhere comfortable, wherever it is that you have what you need to be able to have what is effectively a conversation. I think oral argument is, at the end of the day, a conversation among people who are trying to figure out the best answer to a question. And so you usually have your best conversations in a place where you're comfortable. Okay, next question. What is being done to facilitate jury trials? Will the people who choose to show up for jury duty be a representative cross-section of the community? Will more time be provided for voir dire? So jury trials are the hardest question we're all facing in this pandemic, because while some may be able to be conducted on a remote platform when the lawyers and the litigants choose to conduct them that way, when they want to conduct them that way, others simply won't be, and we're going to have to figure out how to do them in public spaces where we can protect the health and safety, not just of the lawyers and the litigants and the court staff, but of the citizens who show up to serve. And I'm aware of 2 jury trials that have been conducted in Michigan in the last couple of weeks. One was in Traverse City in a high school auditorium. The other was in a courtroom in, I'm going to forget the county, another up north county, but the jurors were spread out through the courtroom. They were not seated in the jury box, and both went to verdict without incident. But the question about who will show up is one that is on our radar. The National Center for State Courts recently did a national survey on this question about who would feel comfortable showing up and what kinds of safety protocols would make people more comfortable, and how courts can communicate to the public that they are using those safety protocols is something we're looking at, so that we can give judges throughout the state some guidance on that. Just people know that if they show up, they will be protected is obviously important. And then making sure we have track of who does feel comfortable to show up and does show up is just going to be something we're going to have to watch as we go forward. This is going to be an area where there will be lots of trial and error, I'm afraid, and we will have to figure out our way through, and it's not going to be simple. It will be the hardest among all of the things that we're going to try and figure out. Next question. Are there any plans to integrate the county's court rules on protocols for e-filing? Is there a plan to make a standard e-filing system for all of Michigan or most of it? I think I answered that with my previous question. The answer is there is a plan. It's just a plan that's going to take a while, but we are moving into the next phase of it now. Next question. How do they feel this will help with accessibility if in the courts? How are you hoping it will help? I assume you mean how does remote access help? And I think the answer is for folks who have difficulty getting time off from work, finding childcare, finding transportation, finding parking. For lawyers who want to be able to appear in a court in Detroit in the morning and Grand Rapids an hour later, the platform is clearly a win for accessibility. I was on the phone with a judge recently in Kent County who took a misdemeanor plea from a criminal defendant who was at his job in Ohio and took his break and went and on his phone took responsibility for the crime he was charged with, heard the judge out on what was going to be expected of him, and thanked the judge for the ability to continue to work and not have to miss a day of work to drive to Grand Rapids, or Kent County, I should say, to be able to get that business done. So that's the main reason why I think it's a big win for access. Next question. Are there any major differences, other than being remote, on how the Supreme Court plans on handling upcoming arguments in the fall compared to how arguments were handled before the pandemic? So that's a good question that we actually haven't started talking about yet. We normally open our term in the first week of October. This year we actually will have an emergency argument on September 2nd. So my colleagues and I will have to discuss how we will conduct that argument. The Zoom platform has worked very well for us, so we are lucky that we have an easy option. If there is a way to safely have an argument in the courtroom, I'm sure we'd love to do that, but we'll have to figure out whether that's possible. But we haven't had that conversation yet. We are in the process of trying to finish all of for this term. Our deadline is July 31st at midnight, and that's probably what we'll be doing between now and then. Okay, next question. Does the court plan to expand the virtual services to promote transparency, to promote more transparency? Yes.
This is my question.
Yes. Again, the ways in which the virtual platform has expanded transparency are tremendous. Like I said, I think there are many cases where there is not a whole lot of public interest in a particular argument, in a particular case. But in some, there certainly are. In our own docket, I think there are some cases where the only person watching is my dad, and that's fine. But in other cases, folks are very interested, and they can and should be able to watch no matter where they live in the state without driving to Lansing. And that's true in a public health crisis, but it's just as true when we're not in the middle of that crisis. Next question. Using interpreters is a challenge on the Zoom platform. Is this being addressed? Yes, absolutely it is. It is one of a number of challenges trial court challenges that we have on the platform. And we are both working with Zoom as we see these challenges, and they've been incredibly responsive to us. As well as continuing to get information from the judges and the public on what those difficulties are. We have to make sure we understand them to be able to address them. But yes, that is an important one, and probably one we have to continue to do better on. This whole asking the questions and answering them is using a lot of my lung capacity. Okay, next question. How will we decide during the next 2 years which counties are added to the electronic filing system? As one of the largest areas in the state, Kent County would benefit from early inclusion. Can you comment on that? I can, although I wish I could. I don't have in front of me where Kent County is in the regional onboarding. If you want to make sure you get a message to me, I can circle back on that. The way that e-filing rollout is going is regions, and I just don't recall where Grand Rapids is or Kent County is in that rollout, but I can circle back. Okay, next question. I'm sorry. Okay. I was involved in a hearing where the opposing party was unrepresented, but it was very evident that she had another non-attorney with her, coaching her throughout the hearing. With video evidentiary adversarial hearings, how can we ensure the rules of evidence and other rules and procedures are followed? Yeah, I mean, this is going to be certainly an issue in the Zoom platform. I actually was talking to a judge the other day who told me that she had to tell a litigant not to smoke during the Zoom hearing. She said to the litigant, "This is court, please don't smoke while you're in this hearing." Obviously, that's less important in a way than making sure the rules of evidence and the other processes are followed. But because there are challenges, of course, isn't a reason not to figure out how to move forward. If it is the case that there is a particular case or a particular hearing in a particular case that might not lend itself to the platform. Well, that's why we have to make sure we can continue to do business in our courtrooms as well in a safe way. But because there are so many others that can proceed this way, it just has to be a tool in our toolbox. We'll just have to keep an eye on that. Question. Family court is being broadcasted over YouTube now. How can litigants obtain their video hearings? Purchase? Will this be easier with the tech changes? I think this is a question about getting copies of the video records, and that is a court by court issue. I think there are some courts where that has always been not difficult, and others where it's a lot more difficult. At least that's my information. But it's certainly worth our thinking about, making a note about it. If there is a way to learn from what we're doing to make access to proceedings easier, that should be on our list, especially for our sort of lessons learned task force. So thank you for the question, and I'm gonna put it on my list. Question. That jury study was deeply concerning. Older individuals who could be very good jurors either don't want to come because of COVID concerns or have inadequate internet access. We have concerns in our office that the jury arrays will no longer be fair representation of the community. How do we address that? I think this is a really important question. And again, I don't think it's a question we have enough data yet to know how to address, but we're going to have to rely on you lawyers to make sure you bring it to the attention of our judges. The only way we can address it is if we have the information and the question put to us. But obviously, the constitutional requirement of a fairly represented, a fair cross-section doesn't go away because we're in the middle of a public health crisis like every other constitutional requirement. So I think we need you. I mean, we're going to need all of you to help us figure out where the problems are as we are moving to do what we can on the Zoom platform and do what we can in the courtroom. And one of those problems we should all be looking at is who is no longer feeling comfortable showing up for jury duty. Question. Will this system be user-friendly so all parties can assist and advocate on their behalf if needed? That's a great question. And actually, this has been one of the, maybe we should have seen consequences, but I didn't fully expect it. We've heard from a number of judges how, as well as from self-represented litigants, how much they appreciate the Zoom platform. And let me give you a couple of examples. People report feeling like they have more of an equal say in what's happening, and more voice in what's happening. And I don't know if it's because everybody's Zoom box is the same size. It's got sort of an equalizing effect. But in other cases, it's because for some people, it's a more comfortable place to say what they think. So for example, we hear from family court judges or judges who are handling cases with children, that children are far more comfortable on this platform than they are in courtrooms. Maybe that should have been perfectly predictable. Courtrooms, of course, can be intimidating. And talking to your phone is far more comfortable for lots of kids. But we've had judges say they've heard from child litigants, or children in proceedings, that they want to have status hearings because they want to talk to the judge. And they are all of a sudden far more talkative. They want to show the judge their room and talk about issues that they had a harder time doing in a courtroom. In addition to that, we've heard that far more people are showing up. Again, this is anecdotal, so there's probably information that we have, and I always want that information. But in guardianship proceedings, Judge Milt Mack, who is the State Court Administrator Emeritus, has been remotely zooming in to cover a probate docket in Macomb County. And he reports that he's hearing from far more interested parties in the guardianship cases because it's easier for them to show up in a Zoom courtroom than it might have been in an in-person courtroom. So in fact, we think there are tremendous advantages for the remote platform for this topic. Okay, do you have any suggestions on how to approach court staff asking for emailed notices? Has this issue been considered for an all-accompanied administrative order from the Supreme Court? Excuse me, courier routes and mail, I am experiencing sporadic delays, and that results in delayed notices. Yeah, so this is a question about why we shouldn't make use of electronic notices, and the answer is we absolutely should. And one of our emergency orders was encouraging courts to collect electronic information from lawyers and litigants so they could send out notices that way. I will say that I personally have had that same mail problem. I mean, sometimes I seem to get mail on time, and sometimes it seems to never arrive, and sometimes it just takes far longer than it should. And if there is anything we have learned, this is obviously something we were of. To the extent our order encouraged it and allowed it, but didn't require it, I think that's another topic for my list of how can we make sure we do this going forward. So I appreciate the question again. Okay, sorry, I'm moving down. Since we are evolving into the technological age now, how close are we to using technology in other aspects to promote accountability? So I'm not sure exactly what the question is aimed at, but I guess my overarching message is technology is plainly an avenue to increase transparency, accountability, efficiency, and accessibility. We have to use it, though, not just to rebuild old processes, but instead to build better processes from the ground up. You know, we have a unique opportunity. We don't get an opportunity like this very often. It's the only one in my lifetime. And it won't make sense if we just build a technological version of old processes. Let's rethink how we build is better in terms of transparency and accessibility and also accountability. So my answer is, I sure hope so. Since we are evolving into the technical, oh, I already said that one, sorry, excuse me. Are there any proposed court rules that will specifically address remote trial practice and remote ADR? Great question. The lessons learned, what we take with us committee, I know there's a more official title, I'm sorry, I'm not coming up with it right now again, old lady, is working on exactly that. What recommendations should the court consider putting into rules or other orders or even guidance going forward? So it's something we are absolutely working on, but we welcome any input and feedback, like I said. Why are the Court of Claims on YouTube for download and share, but not circuit courts? Download and share, I'm not sure I understand the question, but I will look into it and figure it out. The courts throughout the state have the option of live streaming while they're proceeding or putting up the link after the fact, and I think some are doing it different ways. The Court of Claims, I guess, is both live streaming and allowing it to be downloaded. But we have not told courts they have to do it that way. That may be something we should tell them. But again, like I said, we're trying to learn throughout this process and figure out what the best way forward is. like I said at the start, one of the big advantages, I think, has been all of us risk-averse lawyers and judges learning that we can try things, and when they're not perfect, try a next version, and when that's not perfect, try a next version. And by failing fast, we will get to better outcomes for everybody. So it may well be that the Court of Claims got there faster, but we'll look at that, and if so, we can take it forward. I think it is 11:58. Scott, Kenny, am I about done, or should I stick around for more questions? I think I am done with the questions I see in the chat tool. I am grateful to everybody for your participation. I've gotten lots of good notes out of this, and I intend to take a look at all of those issues.
Chief Justice McCormick, I appreciate your spending time with us and informing us on all of the great goings on here in our courts. It's wonderful to see what's happened in our court system over the last many years, or since your involvement in here. We've gone from dysfunctionality early on into a court that seems to be speaking, as you said, with one voice. And we thank you for your time and for the participation of those here today, and look forward to seeing all of these other things carried through as we move forward. Thanks again.
Thank you very much for having me.